Per Jake Fisher, people around the league think a Joel Embiid for Domantas Sabonis trade could work. Now, he did mention it's very, very unlikely. However, I think it's worth discussing. Also want to give my thoughts on if Joel Embiid should be a Sixer or not next season. And right away, I'm going to be real. I would do this trade in a heartbeat, not even thinking about it. And my only reason is just I'm kind of sick of the availability issue with Joel Embiid, and I don't expect it to get any better. And I think it's time for both sides to move on. Now, of course, I will have to mention that Sabonis only played 19 games last season, but before that, 70 games in 2025, 82 games in 2024, 79 in 2023. So it kind of felt like an outlier year for Sabonis, and I think he would have played more in the second half of the season if the Kings were not tanking. I also go back to the Boston series. Obviously, Joel Embiid coming back was the main reason why they ended up winning that series. Truly, he deserves so much credit for that. However, at one point, the series was 1-1 heading into Game 3 without Joel Embiid. It was highly competitive. They just did not have enough to take down the Celtics again without their max guy, Joel Embiid. But in that game, you're relying on Adem Bona to play more minutes than he should have to. You're relying on Andre Drummond, and I'm just like, insert whatever center, a guy like Sabonis, they probably take Game 3 and go up 2-1. And it was the same story in Game 2 against the Knicks. No Joel Embiid, and I thought that's where the Sixers really lost the series because they played a great game and they still lost. I think that truly rattled their confidence. However, there's been a ton of discussion whether this season was a success or not. And for me, coming into the year, I was focused on the Sixers, their future without Joel Embiid. Can they be less poverty when he's off the floor? Because we know that's going to happen. Because in the 2024-25 season, it was disturbing, the product we witnessed, 16-47. I think if you're making an argument for this season actually being a success is without Joel Embiid, they had a 21-23 record, a big time improvement. And then in the NBA playoffs, they beat Boston without him on their home floor. And then Game 2 of the Knicks series, neck and neck game. And those two teams, Boston and New York, they're considered title contenders. And the main reason they were able to do that is because the trio of Maxey, VJ, and Paul George. And I just wonder what the season will look like with a more available center, but also still an elite center. I'm not saying Sabonis is better than Joel Embiid. He definitely isn't. However, he definitely does bring enticing things to the table. He's one of the better rebounders in all of basketball. He knows his role. He is going to be setting up Tyrese Maxey, VJ, Paul George 24/7. And of course, losing the option of just, Joel dominating for a whole entire game like the end of that Celtics series, that's certainly gonna hurt. But that all goes out the window when he's barely available. And let's just be real, the Sixers are not going anywhere if they don't develop chemistry throughout the whole season on the court. On top of that, they're not going anywhere when they have to run a completely different style when Joel Embiid's out there versus when he's not out there. All the great teams in the NBA, when they win championships, they're doing the same thing in the regular season and they're doing the same thing in the postseason. They're establishing their habits in the regular season as a team, and they continue that in the postseason. The only thing that actually changes is they cut down the rotation and it becomes more difficult running your stuff because you're going up against the same team and everyone's playing hard 24/7. Now, I will say, I think there's pathways to success going in either direction, whether you're keeping Joel Embiid or letting him go. But considering the modern NBA is kind of about who can survive the longest in the playoffs health-wise, also depth means so much more than it used to. So going into another season with your highest paid players being the most unavailable superstars in the NBA, I just don't think you can do that again. It's unfair for a guy like Tyrese Maxey, who literally put everything on the line this season, playing an absurd amount of minutes, and ultimately it led to his demise, having a terrible series against the Knicks. Considering where Joel Embiid is at in his career and what it's looking like with his injuries, I just think getting back a talent like Sabonis is something you can't pass up. Is he a top 5 big in the NBA? Probably not. but he's still very elite at that position, and he's going to play. And I know some people are going to say that doesn't get you closer to a championship, but how close to a championship are the Sixers really right now? They have no depth on the roster. Joel Embiid is never on the floor, so I don't think the aspirations right now should be championship. It should be, how can we be a competent franchise without Joel Embiid, because he's been carrying us for like 8 straight seasons. And finally, this season, they actually flashed some potential without Joel Embiid. It wasn't anything crazy, but at least it's a start. And I know that's going to start the questions. Can Tyrese Maxey be a number one? Will VJ turn into a number one? And I'm just sitting here. I'm literally watching the Sixers. I see Kelly Oubre as a starter. I see Adem Bona as a starter. And I'm like, you're asking those questions? We don't even have a team! You're just wasting your time answering and asking those questions, because the team around them, even if they were that guy, it doesn't matter. They're not going to get anywhere with it. And that was the whole problem with the Joel Embiid era. Everyone was so focused on Joel being that guy. No, we got to get enough around him so he can be that guy. The new formula in the modern NBA is building the best team. It doesn't matter if you have the best player. I mean, just look at the Indiana Pacers. Took the Thunder to 7 games last season. Do you honestly believe before that title run, people were saying, oh yeah, Tyrese Halliburton, he's a number one on an NBA Finals winning team? No, no one said that. No one believed in them. No, but they actually built a team 1 through 8 that is legit with starting caliber players on the bench and in the starting lineup. And we're wasting our time asking, oh, is VJ going to turn into a number one? Is Tyrese Maxey going to turn into a number one? We have Andre Drummond playing in the NBA playoffs. Who gives a fluff? Whew, sorry about that. I was just holding on to that rant for a while. I just don't understand why people waste their time asking those questions right now. We're so far behind. We're so far away from a championship. It doesn't even matter. Last thing I want to mention, I'm all for trading Joel Embiid when it comes to getting back a guy like Sabonis, because he's established and he's a very good basketball player. But if it's an Anthony Davis return, I don't know. I would rather just eat Embiid's contract and hope, he's somehow healthy for the playoffs. He probably won't be, but who knows? I don't know. It will be interesting to see whether they trade him or not. Let me know your thoughts below. Should they trade Joel Embiid for anything and anything? Or do you try to get some depth around this team and see if they can relatively stay healthy? AKA deja vu. Have yourself a great day. Peace out.